Hey, welcome to Home Lab Heroes. We're here with Ray McGill and Clem Sang. I'm Rob Newport, and we're going to be talking about home labs and maybe some other stuff too. I see a lot of guitars in the background. So, are you working on any kind of music right now, or?
Yeah, so I'm in a couple of bands. So one of them, Lithic, is one I started during the COVID lockdowns. Basically, I just had a lot of time, so I started to delve more into well, yeah, what can I do by myself, and yeah, I had to learn a bit about tracking. I've got a good friend Ash who is a genius at these sorts of things, and he helped me out a lot along the way. But yeah, just had to get better at playing, but also yeah, writing, recording, tracking, different techniques, and just making the most out of what you can do in an apartment bedroom. So yeah, I've done two albums with that, and halfway through a third album now. So yeah, that's the main thing I'm working on. But then I've got like a little MIDI keyboard here, which I like to make some silly, synth wave type stuff with every now and then, and yeah, just have as many options as I can, and whenever something takes my fancy, I give it a go.
Yeah, it seems to be that a lot of people who are kind of into technology, or maybe they have a technical background, are also somehow connected to music and making music, especially when it comes to
Mm,
like electronic or electronically enhanced music. And I
yeah.
wonder if there's a like a vibe or like some kind of a connection, because in the last chat we had, there was also a connection with like the early Amiga tracker scene and in getting all of this music compressed and onto floppy disk, where professional audio systems were kind of disrupted by home systems like with the Sound Blaster and Ravis Ultrasound back in the day. And I'm wondering if your past was also followed a similar trajectory where you got really into technology and the music was there, or maybe you got into music and then the technology came in.
Yeah, so I was kind of into technology in a different way. Like I was gaming since I was old enough to work out how to access a game in DOS, or on. I think we had old Ataris when I was pretty young. But yeah, I was always into music, and yeah, it's sort of only I've always left the recording and the music technology side of it to other. There's always someone in the band that can sort that kind of thing out. So it's really more recently that I've come to get involved in that side of it. But yeah, previously, I work in data analytics, so it's technology for me. Aside from gaming, has been more on the analytical side, database side over the years.
Yeah, so what
For
kind
me,
of gaming was it?
the very first few games I remember being right into was like sort of like Command and Conquer, X-Wing, theme park, those sorts of things around the. Like I was born in '86, so probably around sort of '92, '93. We had a 386 or a 486 at some point along the line there. And the original Nintendo was sort of when I was, old enough to have legitimate memories about gaming. Um, but I've got a real soft spot for the late '90s, early 2000s era of gaming. Like I'm playing on my Xbox One, I'm playing Shadowrun at the moment. So you know,
Oh, nice.
really, really taking full advantage of the the hardware there to run a game from whatever it is, '03. But yeah, particularly that late '90s, early 2000s. I reckon there was like the graphics were kind of just good enough to didn't matter, and there's this real emphasis on storytelling or like um, interesting gameplay, I guess.
What do you think about like the way they did music back then? Like the chip tunes and the FM synthesis and all that stuff. Did that influence any of your musical tastes in like nowadays, or how does that play
Yeah,
into your genre?
yeah. So I play a lot of extreme metal. In not just Lithic, but in other bands I'm in that they're a bit more extreme than Lithic. Um, but it's interesting. There's like a sort of a real synth wave or like yeah, that old there's a game I remember called Mordor 2, and it was sort of like a dungeon crawler, but text-based, large. Oh, maybe it was just 2D. Anyway, um, but yeah, it had this really cool MIDI soundtrack, and yeah, that there's in the black metal scene. There's almost a well, there is like a bunch of people that make that kind of music, and it gets called black metal. As a band Summoning, which does excellent sort of, it's more complex, more I guess layered and rich than I guess that pure MIDI stuff, but it's born out of that, you can tell. And I really like playing Mario Kart the other day with a friend, and it's just like that soundtrack that you can like. There's a real art to writing songs that effectively go on loop for however long the whatever it is, Mario, Sonic, all those platformers with just this constant music that you're going to hear a million times as you try and beat that level, but to not drive you insane. It's like a real art in repetition, but difference and a variety.
Yeah. I remember the first time it kind of converged for me was during Quake, the release of Quake, where so I was a youngster when Quake came out, and I was really into Nine Inch Nails before Quake came out. And then Quake came out, and I was like, "Oh my God!" My head exploded because it was like, that was when Trent Reznor kind of got a little bit more hard in his music, and so this really kind of intense industrial metal mixed with this amazing 3D game that was just like it hit so many buttons for me, and it was just really like. I think the first time sound design was like a word that came into video games, and it just and then they had the Nine Inch Nails gun in Quake, and so that was just like it was an amazing marriage of all the things that I loved, and I think when that happens, you've got amazing synergy, and I think we kind of see it a lot more nowadays. I think now it's kind of just, I guess, a given that good games are going to have that kind of marriage of great audio, great sound design, great music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Nintendo kind of does a good job, not as far as metal goes, but with like I'm a big fan of Mario Kart as well, and it's just when that music starts going dun 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 dun,
yeah,
and I'm just like
the heartbeat starts going fast.
yeah. And I think there's definitely. Did you ever see that video that showed like some of the influencing music that went into the Nintendo music, like all those old 70s songs that kind of were inspiration?
What kind of was it, like funk or something, or what was it?
It was kind of it was like jazzy kind of dun 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 is actually a song. There's a song that goes like that, So,
right.
But yeah, you should look that up on YouTube because it's really funny to see these kind of obscure tracks that may have been kind of influential in Nintendo's music.
You know that Nintendo has launched their own channel on Spotify because they're trying to commercialize or monetize all of those soundtracks. And as they push out the eStore, because they're deplatforming retail by moving into the cloud and then trying to socialize existing audiences and gamers, the music culture is underpinning all of that.
Didn't Nintendo release a music maker, and someone actually released an album with the Nintendo music maker, and they brought the Nintendo into the studio? I'll put a link to that if I could find it in the description. But I remember someone actually did build an entire album, or at least a couple of tracks.
I've thought about it for tabletop role playing as well. It's like often a dungeon master or whatever for Dungeons and Dragons, whatever game people might be playing will have a soundtrack. So I have considered trying to make, whatever it is, 10 minutes or half an hour chunks of music for that.
Do you remember playing the game Nightmare? Did you ever purchase that? It was a DVD plus a board game.
Oh, I remember seeing. Yeah, I remember seeing ads for it on every rental video I had as a child.
But
But I
that's
never.
pretty much what you were saying. It's a structured campaign mode, but it's multiplayer.
Mm,
So you're
yeah.
focusing on the board, and then
Mm.
suddenly the TV will erupt, which scares the crap out of everyone. But I've always said that cinema will eventually get there. I've always dreamed of MMORPG, massive room of everybody playing together, and then the story changes based on how the realm is going, 50 versus 50 or whatever, live. And then you've got cinematic kind of choose your own adventure style conclusions to each chapter.
I think we're getting there because well, Dungeons and Dragons is basically theater, right? So you're role playing your character, and there's a kind of a game master or dungeon master who's kind of choreographing it. But then, if you've got people watching that, then it's kind of like they're watching a theatrical performance of this group kind of, improvise this scenario. So it's kind of like improvised theater, voyeuristic improvised theater, and if you look on YouTube, there's quite a few channels that have really blown up in popularity around that.
Actually, there was they used to. Well, I used to live in Sydney up until a little while ago, and there was this group called Dragon Friends that once a month they'd do live D&D, and one of the people from Axis of Awesome, I don't know if you know that comedy music group, one of them would do the soundtrack live. Yeah, he just had a couple of keyboards there, and something ominous would start to happen, and he switches the vibes. It's pretty cool.
So we're talking about building, and now we've gone deep into the future of interactive entertainment.
Yeah, with no technology, everyone just in person
with foam swords. So let's roll back to you were playing games. Did you ever build your own computer, or was it all kind of retail?
So I had a friend that gave me most of a working computer when I was in high school, and I just had to. I did have to throw in a few extra bits, but it was just like slotting in a network card and that kind of thing, or slotting in the modem. I haven't built a lot. I try. I'm not great with my hands and fiddly things, so patience for fiddly things. So it's probably for the best. It would have been some expensive mistakes along the way. I did actually, when I was the other day when I was thinking about this, I did remember a time at uni though. I lived in one of those old brick apartment buildings, like 8 apartments in the building, and it was maybe like 4 or 5 other apartments had uni students in it too. But only I had the internet. There was like ADSL or whatever, but no one else did. So we set up a network of just we cut out a slot out of my door frame and fed 4 big Ethernet cables out down the hallway to the next apartment and that sort of thing. But then later on, I moved downstairs to a different apartment in the same building, and then we put the Ethernet cables out of like the brick vents the vents you get in those brick apartments. So if you looked outside or looked at the building from the outside, there's just like 3 long blue cables. That's kind of the extent of my hacking things together as a technologist.
Do you run any kind of like home servers, your own file server or something?
No, not at the moment. I used to have. I've got a NAS sitting on my desk which is not being used. I really, I'm actually hitting this problem at the moment where my iMac is sort of 5 or 6 years old now, and I'm making it do more things than I ever intended. And so I'm trying to work out what I get next. And I've got this real constant problem of storage because, creating music, I used to do a podcast called Metal Minutia. We videoed that. So yeah, I end up with, gigs of video for every episode, which gets edited together. And like, yeah, processing power is one thing, but I feel like I need like 4 or 5 terabytes of storage, which is not practical for any. So then I'm like, what do I do? Do I go to the cloud? Do I just have some sort of media server at home with just mass storage? Yeah, I'm maybe you can help me. I'm trying to deal with this problem.
Well,
at the moment.
I think as 10 years ago, this wasn't as much of a problem because we had this explosive growth in storage media, right? So we had like terabytes that were accessible a long time ago, that were usually locally stored, and then we kind of a lot of stuff moved to the cloud, and everyone just stores their stuff there. But now the cloud's starting to get kind of pricey because like we're all starting to be content producers, right? So it's not unusual for someone to be in a band, maybe making like small movies, but also working as a in a tech job or in sales or something, like something totally unrelated. Like it's not unusual to have a hobby where you're generating massive amounts of data. But the problem is that like home systems haven't really caught up, and cloud servers are starting to get expensive. And so people are starting to kind of think about, how do what is file storage? What is a NAS, or what is network attached storage? And I think that's kind of creeping into the kind of family vernacular.
It was even easier when we had whether it be disk drive, CD-ROM drive, DVD drive in our computers, which doesn't really exist anymore. If they could just have like a little spindle of DVDs here with everything sorted.
I remember burning that like crazy, and you'd have a whole shelf, and everyone was there. And it's not bad storage, like 3-4 gigs. I mean, I guess 4 gigs won't cut it now. Maybe it would though. I use GoPro to shoot sport. One 90-minute session is 4 3-gig files. It takes me probably 3 hours to upload it. It drives me nuts because it slows the entire network down for me to upload one video, right? Don't talk about download. That's easy. It's the upload speed to the cloud. That's annoying, right?
Yeah.
So if I could burn 4 CDs or DVDs and then just have it there, then I don't need to. It's more the transportation to someone else to, access the link and then they do something with it, or the productionization of that. But if you had a VPN into your own home server, they could just tunnel in, right? So theoretically, Rob, that could be that you create a private cloud so that collaboration is now consumerized instead of relying on a massive enterprise cloud. Does that make sense, Rob? Would you say that works?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think Synology, the company Synology that makes an off-the-shelf NAS, has a built-in system to be able to do this off your own, network attached storage at home. But it's kind of like it still is a bit technical for the average person, but I think it's quickly becoming less and less so. Or maybe the average person is becoming more and more savvy when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years, it becomes very commonplace to have both, some kind of home lab or home situation, coupled with, a cloud for like very specialized cases. Right now, it's kind of like cloud is one size fits all. And I think that's not really working out for most people. Yeah. So that wraps it up for our chat with Ray McGill. Really nice to have you on here, and thanks for giving us a little trip down memory lane. Thank you, Clem.
Great to be here.
And see you guys next time.
Catch you later.
Cheers.